For centuries, the story of North America's European discovery has revolved around one man, Christopher Columbus. His name sits in textbooks, on monuments, and in the cultural imagination as the figure who opened the Western Hemisphere to Europe. Yet long before Columbus ever stepped onto a westward-bound ship, another civilization had already crossed the Atlantic. These were the Norse, or as they are popularly known, the Vikings. However, many people have doubted or dismissed the idea that Vikings reached North America in any meaningful or sustained way. To some, the stories felt like legend, exaggeration, or medieval fantasy. But now, new scientific evidence reveals a very different reality. The popular misconception persists that Vikings accidentally stumbled across North America, perhaps blown off course by a storm, landed briefly, looked around, and immediately sailed home, never to return. The new evidence reveals that Vikings actually integrated North America into their world system, using its western forests as a distant yet accessible resource, similar to how modern nations rely on overseas suppliers. This was not a one-off event, but a consistent pattern of intentional voyages, resource extraction, and transatlantic travel spanning ages. To understand how the Norse reached North America, the story first turns toward Greenland, which in the late 10th century became the far western edge of the known European world. This was the age of Viking expansion, when Norse seafarers pushed beyond Scandinavia, establishing settlements in the Faroe Islands, Iceland, and eventually Greenland itself. In the year 985 AD, Eric the Red, a man exiled from Iceland for manslaughter, led a fleet of settlers from Iceland into Greenland's deep, cold fjords. Eric explored Greenland's coast during his 3-year exile, discovering 2 habitable regions separated by hundreds of miles of barren ice. When his exile ended, he returned to Iceland with promises of green pastures and fertile land. The name Greenland itself is said to originate from a piece of Viking marketing designed to attract colonists to a place that was anything but uniformly green. Yet the gambit worked. 25 ships set sail with Eric's fleet. 14 survived the crossing. They built farms, churches, workshops, and even a cathedral at Garder. But Greenland was harsh and unforgiving, with summers barely 3 months long, thin soils yielding poor harvests, and most critically, a severe lack of timber. The shortage was existential, as wood underpinned Norse survival and prosperity. Ships alone required vast amounts of strong, straight timber for keels, ribs, planking, masts, oars, and steering boards to endure the punishing ocean waves and Arctic ice. But only dwarf birch and willow grew in Greenland. These were stunted shrubs barely suitable for kindling, let alone construction. Yet the Norse still built boats, houses, barns, and tools requiring vast amounts of wood, including ocean-going vessels capable of crossing hundreds of miles of open water. Scholars long questioned how a people in a treeless land sustained a society so dependent on lumber. Where did the wood come from? How was it acquired? And how often? A new study from the University of Iceland now provides the answer. Archaeologists analyzed 8,552 wooden fragments recovered from several Norse farmsteads in Greenland. They used microscopic techniques to identify species, growth patterns, and cellular structures, essentially botanical traces preserved in the wood fragments. This work involved examining the microscopic anatomy of each piece, the size and arrangement of cells, the thickness of cell walls, and the presence of specific anatomical features unique to particular tree families. Among the thousands of pieces analyzed, the vast majority came from predictable sources: driftwood from Siberian forests that had been carried by Arctic currents across the top of the world and had long been known to wash up on Greenland's beaches. Pine and spruce from Scandinavia arrived as trade goods and ship timbers brought across the North Atlantic by settlers and merchants. These materials matched expectations, confirming patterns already suggested by historical documents. But a small group stood out: 26 fragments of oak, beech, hemlock, and jack pine. 26 fragments of oak, beech, hemlock, and jack pine. None of these species grew in Greenland. None grew in Iceland. None grew anywhere in Scandinavia or along the currents that carried Siberian driftwood. Their origins pointed unmistakably to North America, from forests around the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the Labrador coast, regions where these species grew in abundance and could be harvested from accessible coastal stands. These were not random driftwood deposits shaped by tides or currents. The fragments showed clear human modification, including cut marks from metal tools and worked surfaces made for specific purposes, indicating deliberate selection and processing. Crucially, the wood had been cut from the bases of living trees, freshly felled timber chosen for strength and quality, not weathered driftwood collected from beaches. Geography also makes natural drift impossible. Although Siberian driftwood can reach Greenland via the transpolar drift across the Arctic Ocean in sea ice, no ocean current could carry hemlock or jack pine from North America. These species grow along the eastern North American coast, entirely outside Arctic current systems. For such wood to reach Greenland, human action was required: cutting, loading onto ships, and transport across the Davis Strait. All 26 North American wood pieces came from a single site. Gardar, the seed of Greenland's bishop and its most powerful farmstead, indicating that only wealthy households could obtain such valuable material. North American timber was a luxury accessible to elites but beyond ordinary farmers. Together, the evidence points not to a single desperate voyage, but to organized, intentional expeditions carried out by structured Norse communities financed by those with the resources to equip ships and crews for dangerous crossings. The modern chapter of this story began in 1960, when archaeologists uncovered the remains of a Norse settlement at Lance Meadows on the northern tip of Newfoundland. Here were long houses, workshops, and an iron smelting furnace unmistakably Scandinavian. But in 2021, researchers achieved something even more precise. Using cosmic radiation signatures preserved in tree rings, they were able to date Viking activity at the site precisely to the year 1021. This achievement depended on identifying a specific cosmic ray event that occurred in 992 AD, leaving a distinctive spike in radiocarbon levels in tree rings worldwide. By counting rings outward from this marker in wood found at Lance Meadows, researchers determined that the trees had been cut exactly 29 years after the cosmic event in 1021. Lance Meadows is the earliest known European settlement in North America, predating Columbus by nearly 5 centuries, and proves the Norse reached the continent and established a foothold, however brief. Yet the newly analyzed Greenland wood reveals something deeper. The Vikings did not make a single visit and withdraw forever. They returned repeatedly, transporting timber and resources across the Davis Strait and maintaining contact over what may have been centuries. Lance Meadows was likely not the only Norse site, and it reflects a broader pattern of recurring journeys. Medieval Icelandic sagas from around the year 1000 described westward voyages to lands rich in forests, game, and resources, specifically noting Greenlanders traveling to Markland. Markland, which corresponds to the Labrador coast, for timber. Once dismissed as fiction, these accounts are now supported by scientific evidence indicating the sagas preserve a core of historical truth. Despite their skill and resilience, the Greenlandic Norse vanished due to various reasons. By the 1400s, the settlements had faded, leaving only ruins and worked timber. Norse outposts in North America ended before Greenland's collapse. Lance Meadows was deliberately abandoned with no valuables left behind, indicating an orderly withdrawal, though it may have been revisited sporadically and used as late as 1145 AD, over a century after its founding. Today, the presence of North American wood in North Greenland is among the strongest evidence for sustained Viking activity in the New World. It shows the Vikings crossed the Atlantic centuries before Columbus, harvested and transported North American timber, maintained contact over long periods, and that their once doubted sagas preserved a core of historical truth. As archaeological methods continue to advance and new sites are investigated, more Norse journeys, temporary camps, and even additional settlements may yet be discovered, further improving our understanding of the Vikings' presence in North America. Thanks for watching. If you found this information helpful, you can like, subscribe, share, and comment your thoughts. Until next time,